Maybe you got a plate of leftovers in the last hour. Hope you're enjoying them. I'm thinking about leftovers. I don't know why.
I'm not thinking about leftovers.
Not at all?
No, not at all. I ate plenty yesterday for a week.
Oh, man. I don't know. I could go for some turkey right about now. Welcome to America's News Headquarters from Washington. I'm Leland Vittert.
And I'm Kristen Fisher. Here's what's making news right now. Some words of advice for the acting attorney general on how to handle the special counsel's probe. And it's coming from former independent counsel Ken Starr, speaking to Fox News today.
Plus, Turkey's foreign minister slams President Trump for, quote, turning a blind eye to the murder of Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi.
And anger on the streets of Paris over rising fuel taxes, courtesy of the French President Emmanuel Macron's government. But first, the special counsel Robert Mueller may be nearing another plea deal. Jerome Corsi, he's a conservative writer and an associate of Roger Stone, has confirmed he's in the process of negotiating a plea deal with the special counsel's team. Garrett Tenney is live with more. Hey, Garrett, bring us up to speed.
Well, Kristen, the fact that Jerome Corsi is an associate of Roger Stone is really key here because investigators have been trying to connect the Trump campaign to Russia via Stone's contacts with WikiLeaks. Back in 2016, Corsi told friends that he believed WikiLeaks had the emails of Clinton campaign chairman John Podesta and that they would release them as an October surprise. Once that happened, prosecutors wanted to know if Corsi had a secret backdoor contact with WikiLeaks and if he then used that to pass along information to Trump advisor Roger Stone, who then could have shared it with the Trump campaign. Corsi has been cooperating with Mueller's team for the past 2 months, and he denies having any kind of backdoor contact with WikiLeaks or that any kind of arrangement like that existed. But Corsi now says he is discussing a plea deal with the special counsel. Last week, he described his cooperation as walking into a perjury trap.
I fully anticipate that in the next few days I will be indicted by Mueller for some form or other of giving false information to the special counsel, but I'm going to be criminally charged. And this has been one of the most frightening experiences of my life.
Earlier this month, sources close to the president's legal team told Fox News that the special counsel's probe is winding down and that the WikiLeaks issue is one of the final pieces. The future of the Mueller probe, though, is now in the hands of acting Attorney General Matt Whitaker, who previously criticized the investigation. This morning on Fox News, former independent counsel Ken Starr said Whitaker has a lot of authority over Mueller's work.
He can influence major decisions, major steps. Now, that's not self-defining, that's a judgment call. But he cannot, under the regulations, interfere with the independence of the day-to-day operations. So let's just say, hypothetically, Robert Mueller was about to consider the indictment of one hypothetical Mary Rowe. He needs to go to the acting Attorney General and say, here's what I'm intending to do. That's within the Attorney General's prerogative to say yay or nay.
Now, Mueller was given broad power to investigate any relevant issues that come up during his work, and if Whitaker did step in, we would certainly find out about it because he is required to provide Congress with an explanation as to why, and Democrats have promised they will hold him accountable if he tries to do anything like that. Kristen?
Well, and Democrats now have much more power and ability to hold him accountable now that they control the House. Garrett Tenney, thank you.
You got it.
Leland?
All right, with that, we bring in California Congressman Darrell Issa. Congressman, good to see you. Jerome Corsi, something to be worried about for the president and the Trump campaign or not?
No, I don't think so. I think what we have is an echo, and every time the echo reverberates, you hear the same thing again. The challenge for this administration is to stay focused on their agenda, even as the Democrats take over and begin issuing an onslaught of subpoenas.
Fair to say that you've been on both sides of this in the House, so you would know more than almost anyone. The House can make Robert Mueller's investigation look like child's play when you got 20-plus committees with oversight ability.
Well, it certainly can make it more confusing. As a matter of fact, one of the challenges for the Democrats is they so zealously want to get into what Robert Mueller's been doing. And you know, in the past, they'll say, oh, no, let the independent prosecutor do his job. Well, now they want to be investigating every aspect of the presidency While at the same time, the most salacious part of it is the campaign, the Russia probe, and so on. And so one of the challenges for Nancy Pelosi is actually to keep her people focused on the day-to-day oversight of the government rather than President Trump directly, which is clearly what they promised.
One could say the same thing to Republicans on the Judiciary Committee who are subpoenaing Loretta Lynch and James Comey about things that happened years ago.
Not really. Leland, that is an example where...
How's that not relitigating the past? They're both out of office now.
Well, no, relitigating the past for whether there was a crime is very, very topical. Just a few minutes ago, there was this question of interference with independent prosecutors, interference with an independent investigation. You got to understand, you do understand that you had a meeting on the tarmac with Loretta Lynch and a former president, and then a series inappropriately... And then a series of announcements.
How do the American people fairly look at this something other than Republicans only have a month left in control? This is one last chance to bring Lynch and Comey back onto the frying pan.
Well, first of all,
how do you assume this is in good faith, really?
Well, in fairness, Comey has never answered. But leaving that aside for a moment.
When you say he's never answered, you mean he's never answered under oath?
Right. He's gone out. Well, he's gone out of its way to duck a series of opportunities, both publicly and privately.
He says he'll show up publicly.
Well, I understand he wants to have a spectacle where he doesn't answer the questions. But having said that, the reality is that you're right about one thing, which is there's only a month left in the House. The Senate is a much more deliberative body, less likely to be aggressive. The fact is that this going out of business sale on one side and people like Jerry Nadler saying on a train that he's going to, in fact, remove a justice of the Supreme Court, something that's never been done for actions 30 years before he came. These two both beg the question of, are they doing legitimate oversight leading to legislation? And that's what really matters.
That was Nancy Pelosi's dynamic. Do we legislate or do we investigate? Is the discussion. I want to get to a point you made about the border, because there is this growing crisis, and you have the unstoppable force, which is the growing crisis on the border, the unmovable object, which is December 7th funding the government. Right now, you've got $1.6 billion for the wall in the Senate. You got $5 billion for the wall coming out of the House. Would Republicans be well served, and the president be well served, by shutting down the government if they don't get the $5 full billion?
We need the $5 billion and more. And we need to be able to deal, for example, with these asylum requesters.
No issue about whether or not you need the $5 billion and the president wants the $5 billion. Is it worth shutting the government down as a lame duck Congress over it?
The nature of Congress is you can shut down the government if you don't get enough, or you can add other things that bring people together. For example, bringing more money to screen asylum seekers. It helps Tijuana, it helps San Diego, and in fact, it's something the Democrats would have a hard time voting against. But you're right about one thing. Not having enough money to take care of a border crisis where Mexico is facilitating people coming to our border and then climbing over the fence is a problem.
I'm getting a hard rap. I'm going to ask it for a third time. Is it worth shutting the government down if you don't have $5 billion over the wall?
It is never worth the House not passing a bill and sending it to the Senate and letting the Senate decide how they're going to deal with ours. We've sent them $5 billion. If we need to send them $5 billion again,
what if you need
to
send them $4 billion?
If we send them $5 and they send us $4, I would suspect with some small tweaks, that's a deal.
Interesting. All right. We finally got somewhere. Congressman, we appreciate it. Good luck. You'll be before the Senate on the other side coming up. We wish you luck.
Thank you.
All the best, sir. Kristen?
Turkish officials are blasting President Trump. They're accusing him of turning a blind eye to the murder of Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Our Brian Yennis has more live from West Palm Beach, Florida, which is very close to the southern White House and the president's Mar-a-Lago resort. Hi, Brian.
Good afternoon, Kristen. Well, President Trump continues to make it clear that he believes that Saudi Arabia is just too important of an ally to risk this partnership over the murder of the Washington Post columnist Jamal Khashoggi, also a Saudi dissident. Now, obviously on Thanksgiving, he spent that time re-emphasizing the importance of Saudi Arabia when it comes to fighting Iran and defending Israel. But he also really made it a point to make sure that everyone understood how important Saudi Arabia was to the economy.
They create tremendous wealth. They create really tremendous number of jobs in their purchases. And very importantly, they keep the oil price down. If you want to see a global depression, all you have to do is lift the oil price $50 a barrel, which could happen very quickly once we lose that relationship.
Well, the president's sentiments prompted Turkey's Foreign Minister Mevlut Cavusoglu to say, quote, Trump's statements amount to him saying, I'll turn a blind eye no matter what. Money isn't everything. We must not move away from human values. The Turks and Saudis do not get along, and Turkey has been providing intelligence to the United States about the murder of Khashoggi, including reported audio tapes of the murder in the Saudi consulate in Istanbul, where Khashoggi's body was chopped up. Now, the Washington Post and the Associated Press report the CIA has concluded that Khashoggi was assassinated at the hands of Saudi agents and that they were directed by and ordered by Saudi's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Now, President Trump says the CIA, in fact, has not concluded that the Crown Prince ordered the assassination. He says the CIA report is, in fact, inconclusive and that the Crown Prince vehemently denied the accusation directly to Trump. Now, a Saudi prince says the CIA can't be trusted. Listen.
Those same intelligence organizations are not necessarily as accurate as they should be. The invasion of Iraq was based on so-called intelligence estimates by that same organization that produced this remarkably flawed assessment about this incident.
That was a cheap shot there from a royal prince there, the Saudi family, talking about the CIA. The U.S. has sanctioned 17 members of the Saudi royal family. The Saudis have arrested 11 people that were part of this murder. 5 are facing the death penalty. But now, Kristen, there is growing bipartisan pressure for the president to do more. In fact, Adam Schiff is saying to the Washington Post that he wants to open an investigation on Capitol Hill.
Yeah, President Trump making it very clear that he wants to put business first, U.S. business interests with Saudi first. Brian Yennis, thank you so much.
And a Fox News alert as we go live to the streets of Paris, normally lined with Christmas markets and lighted trees. It is riot police there who are involved in violent clashes with protesters. Thousands have taken to the streets because they're angry about rising gas taxes, which were implemented by the French president. Ryan Chilcote following this from our European news hub. Hi, Ryan.
Hi, Leland. The police say there are about 30,000 protesters out there, to be exact, not just in Paris, but in cities and towns right across the country. And as you might see from some of the pictures, they're super easy to spot because they're all wearing bright yellow high visibility vests, the ones that you actually have to carry in your vehicle by law with you in France in case you get in an accident. Now, why are they angry? Well, French President Emmanuel Macron plans to hike taxes on fuel in the coming year. Diesel, the fuel of choice in France, costs the equivalent of about $6.30 per gallon. Of course, they use liters and euros, but I've converted it for you. Most of that is tax. The tax went up by about 30 cents a gallon this year, and if Macron gets his way, it will go up by another 25 cents per gallon starting January 1. Macron says those taxes are needed to discourage people from buying cars that contribute to climate change, but many French, and particularly French people, working class people that do not live in the capital but on the so-called, if you will, periphery of the country that need their cars to get to work, to commute, to go to stores, they say the taxes are just too high. Macron is already battling a perception that he is out of touch with the working class people in France. Some critics even refer to him as the president of the rich. Now, you may be listening to me here at home, scratching your head, saying, well, wait a minute, though. The price of oil is falling. The price at the pump for gasoline in the United States has been falling. And that is a bit of the irony in this. And that is true as well in France. However, prices are still about the highest they've been at any point in the last 10 years. And there are a lot of French people who are saying this is not the right time to raise our taxes. Back to you.
All right, we'll have to watch if Macron breaks on this one as these images continue to come out of France. Ryan, thank you. Kristen?
A new report out just yesterday finds that climate change will cost the U.S. economy hundreds of billions of dollars by the end of the century, and it'll affect everything from our health to real estate and infrastructure. Ellison Barber is here with me live with more. And I mean, this is a report that has the potential to impact every American.
Right, yes, and it's obviously a hot button issue topic on Capitol Hill, so just from a political standpoint, we're surely going to hear more about it. But this report essentially says that climate change is happening fast, and it is a report, as Kristen, you just said, a report by the federal government. They say that climate change is making extreme weather events more frequent, intense, and widespread.
The continued warming that is projected to occur without significant reductions in global greenhouse gas emissions is expected to cause substantial net damage to the U.S. economy, especially in the absence of increased adaptation efforts.
The National Climate Assessment is a 1,600-page report. It looks at the impacts of climate change now and in the future. The report says annual losses in some economic sectors are projected to reach hundreds of billions of dollars by the end of the century, and that high tide flooding already possesses daily risk to businesses, neighborhoods, infrastructure, transportation, and ecosystems in the region. At one point, the report says that some aspects of the economy could see some improvement in a warmer world, but long term, the author of this report says it's going to hurt Americans, causing health and pocketbook issues.
Global average temperature is much higher and is rising more rapidly than anything modern civilization has experienced. And this warming trend can only be explained by human activities, especially emissions of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere.
This sort of assessment is released every 4 years. It's actually mandated by Congress and an act, the Global Change Research Act from 1990. 13 federal agencies are part of the group that worked on this. The Trump administration released it, though the report seems to contradict some of President Trump's views on climate change. Democrat Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is already responding to this. She tweeted that people are going to die if we don't start addressing climate change. And in her tweet, Kristen, she also called for a select committee on a Green New Deal. Obviously, this is a new report, so once more people come back from their weekend, we'll probably hear a lot on the left and right.
Well, and the fact that this report was released on Black Friday, a day when most Americans are out shopping or spending it with their families and not necessarily paying attention to the news, is getting quite a bit of criticism. Ellison, thank you so much. Leland.
Hard to tell whether that is tear gas or rubber bullets or smoke grenades, but the clashes on the streets of Paris are real. They continue into the night. This violent day over gas prices. We're going to keep watching the streets near the Arc de Triomphe as they unfold. And President Trump doubling down on his feud with Chief Justice John Roberts. Why the president says he isn't getting a fair shake from the judiciary. And in the final weeks before Democrats take control of Congress, what President Trump is prepared to do to get his wall. Violent clashes in Haiti as there are protests calling for the nation's president to step down. So far, 11 dead. Demonstrators accuse the nation's president of not investigating corruption from the previous administration over an energy deal with Venezuela. Schools and government offices, as you might understand with this kind of violence in the streets, are shut down.
Well, 9 Democratic lawmakers now say they'll only support Nancy Pelosi's bid for Speaker if she endorses changes to the House rules. The letter outlining those changes are just the latest speed bump in Pelosi's campaign for House leadership. For more, let's bring in our political panel. Democratic strategist Robin Biro and former Deputy Assistant to President George W. Bush, Brad Blakeman. Thanks for being with us, guys, on this holiday weekend. Pleasure. So I want to start with Nancy Pelosi's chances at becoming the House Speaker again. If the current lead holds in these 2 outstanding House races, Democrats will control 234 seats next year, and that means that Pelosi can really only afford to lose 16 votes. But 15 Democrats have signed a letter saying that they will not support her. So how realistic is it that she's going to become the next Speaker? And Brad, I'll start with you.
Well, I think it's touch and go, but she's meeting around the clock, trying to get those votes. She's silenced those who even had the hint of running against her. And that letter comes from an interesting group, the Problem Solvers Caucus of the Democrats. Already they have a problem, and it's with possibly the new Speaker, who's the old Speaker, Nancy Pelosi. So they're having a little trouble in paradise. Wouldn't it be something, though, if they needed Republican votes and the president had to deliver her the speakership? Could happen.
could happen, highly unlikely, but hey, stranger things have happened in 2018, right? So, Robin, you're a Democratic strategist. Are there any Democrats emerging as real challengers to Pelosi?
Kristen, there are none. We thought we had one with Fudge, but of course she just endorsed Pelosi. So really, there are zero right now to challenge Nancy Pelosi. And you know, I've been a frequent critic of hers, but she does know how to get the votes. She's been whipping the votes. She says she's got them, and you know, as much as I wanted fresh new blood, she does know how to work some deals. And to give her credit where it's due, right out of the gate, when early in Trump's term, she helped negotiate that interim spending bill when the GOP couldn't get it together. So I'm hopeful that we can get some change. I just would like to see a little bit more diversity and to capitalize on some of these new progressives that we've got in the party.
Yeah, but Robin, what does this say about the state of Democrats in the House if they literally can't come up with at least one person to be a viable challenger?
Yeah, it's tricky, and that's where we've got some problems because with a lack of female black candidates right now in the House, it doesn't look good. We have zero in leadership right now in the Senate, so I'm here getting a lot of pushback from people in my party right now because of that, and I decry identity politics, but it's a serious issue right now that we've got to address because we could face some losses in 2 years if we don't.
Brad, what does it say to you?
Well, what it says is I think the resistance of the Democratic Party continues. I think this is more about revenge and getting power back than actually having new leadership. The Democrats are in a conundrum. There are a lot of them who see themselves as socialist Democrats. So they have an identity crisis. They're short of leadership, as my friend just said. And just having Nancy Pelosi come back in and of itself doesn't speak well of the gains they just made.
You know, so many Democrats, so many incoming Democrats ran on a message of promising to change the House leadership. So now, if Nancy Pelosi becomes the House Speaker again, Robin, do you think those same Democrats are going to be in trouble?
No, I don't think they'll be in trouble, but I do really wonder, since no one else has stepped up to the mantle of leadership to run against her, what are they going to do? Are they just going to cast a no vote? It's a challenging question for them as freshman incoming leadership.
Yeah, their hands are pretty tied. What do you think, Brad?
I think Nancy Pelosi's made a lot of these people offers they couldn't refuse. This is a game of muscling out people sheerly for power. As my friend just said, they're not being offered leadership positions. There is no second prize. Nancy gets all the leadership positions that she wants, her people back in power. And really, we're going to have a taste of what Nancy Pelosi is going to be like in January by the lame duck. Are we going to get a spending bill? Is there going to be a shutdown of the government? This will tell the story about what we can expect in 2019.
Well, you know, odds are that she certainly will become the next speaker. It certainly sounds and looks that way when you are, 6 weeks out and no viable challengers? Pretty incredible. Robin, Brad, thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Leland?
Thank you, Kristen.
A New York State judge says a lawsuit against President Trump and his personal charity can move forward. This after the president's attorneys had requested the suit be thrown out. The judge stated it was fair for New York's Attorney General to argue the suit against Trump and his family. The state's AG argues President Trump violated charity laws by using his foundation to advance his campaign.
Coming up, Republican lawmakers are loading up their congressional agenda for the lame duck session before the Democrats take back the House. So what can we expect from Congress over the next few weeks? And is there any room for bipartisanship? And an American sailor rescued after 12 hours at sea, how he found a way to brave these dicey waters. Specific information of a possible terror attack. The embassy sending out a statement just moments ago saying, quote, the United States Embassy in Kinshasa has received credible and specific information of a possible terrorist threat against U.S. government facilities in Kinshasa. The embassy will be closed on Monday, and we'll bring you the very latest developments as this story unfolds.
When Congress comes back this week for their lame duck session, Republicans have a long wish list, and it's unclear if they have the votes to get it all done. Democrats take control of the House in January, and as we have heard, promise to make the most of their newfound power. With that, we bring in GOP strategist Jen Kearns. Jen, nice to see you. As always, Start with this. What bipartisan or a few things can get done? The First Steps Act, the Criminal Justice Reform Act that the president has trumpeted, that's one thing. Anything else that appears to sort of have support on both sides?
Well, looking at what to expect from the new 116th Congress it's kind of like that book, What to Expect When You're Expecting When You're Pregnant. You don't know exactly what it'll be like. You just know that you're in for 9 months of hard labor and some extreme discomfort. I think that's the new position for the GOP in Washington. As for the lame duck, I think you'll see some quick agenda items there fairly quickly. As you were talking with Darrell Issa earlier, they've got that December 7th deadline looming to fund the government. Trump certainly would like for the border wall to be funded, and this is probably his last shot to do so before his reelection effort in 2020. So that'll be interesting to see if the GOP has the backbone to do that.
What's going to be the inflection point? You talked about the 116th Congress. What's the inflection point for Republicans in Congress in the sense that everyone in Washington can always agree about spending more money? That's universal. When are Republicans going to have to take a stand against Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and if they decide to make a deal with the president?
Well, look, if you look at Nancy Pelosi's top priorities, which she has sort of hinted at in the last couple of weeks, it reads like a left-wing manifesto. You've got chief among her top priorities are gun control, taking on the pharmaceutical companies, which they've actually been doing a decent job looking at free market solutions to bring down prescription drug prices. And you look at this voting rights law that Pelosi says she will launch first and foremost as she continues to slander the Republican Party, suggesting that they somehow suppress the votes in the state of Georgia and Florida.
All right, Jen, we appreciate it. Thanks so much, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Leland.
Kristen.
Scary moments caught on camera of an American sailor being rescued from the sea just off the coast of Queensland, Australia on Thursday. The Hawaiian sailor's catamaran capsized and he spent the night huddling in his dinghy until he was saved.
By the time I was able to get out of the cabin and even attempt to do anything, the hull was already full of water and the boat just went bloop, capsized.
I like that matter-of-fact kind of bloop. Yeah.
Well, rescue crews had to use a winch to pluck him from the boat. He's okay, but he lost all of his possessions, including his passport, when the boat went down.
All right, well, he seemed to be okay with it, though. President Trump escalated his feud with Supreme Court Chief Justice John Roberts after the top justice rebuked the president's rhetoric about a federal judge in California, calling the Ninth Circuit Court, quote, a total disaster.
We have people interpreting the laws, and they always give us a bad interpretation. So hopefully we've shown some light on the Ninth Circuit. I know that Chief Justice John Roberts, has been speaking a little bit about it, and I think and I have a lot of respect for him.
The government will not confirm that number or give out any other details on casualties.
President Trump is now doubling down on his feud with Chief Justice John Roberts by accusing the judiciary of undermining national security. So we're going to dig into this with Siraj Hashmi. He's the commentary video editor and writer at the Washington Examiner. Siraj, thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, sure. So, Siraj, you know, for President Trump to criticize individual judges and rulings, I mean, that's nothing new. He's been doing that since the very early days of the campaign. But what is new here is for the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court to actually respond to him. And it was truly an unprecedented response earlier this week. When you heard about it, what did you make of it?
Well, certainly the biggest takeaway here is that it's an interesting time for Chief Justice John Roberts to engage with President Trump in this manner. It could signal to other federal judges that John Roberts is trying to say that he has their backs. But John Roberts' actual comments are somewhat out of touch, because President Trump actually has a point here, a valid point to make about the judiciary being politicized. And it's unfortunate, but it's true. And one of the things that you can actually look to is Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, a Democrat, essentially in an effort to agree with John Roberts, also agrees with the president, saying that the judiciary has become politicized, citing Citizens United, Shelby, and Janus as particular rulings that have become politicized.
Well, it almost feels like everything in this day and age has become politicized. But the point that Chief Justice John Roberts was making is that, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he said, we don't have Obama judges, we don't have Bush judges. All we have are independent judges who are trying to do their best on a case-by-case basis. As President Trump, continues to attack these individual cases and rulings, is he undermining our faith in these institutions?
I think it's a little bit of a stretch to say that he's undermining our democracy and undermining these institutions. Anytime the federal judiciary hands down a ruling that people don't agree with, a lot of times the critics cite politics or the politicization of the courts. And that's certainly no different here. And certainly the president going after John Roberts and the Ninth Circuit is certainly on brand for the president. But beyond that, I think there's a large contingent of the population, namely Trump supporters, who are going to have the president's back no matter what. And for John Roberts to engage in somewhat of a war of words with President Trump is not doing himself or his cause any favors right now.
Well, and there is certainly a case to be made that the Ninth Circuit has been unfair to some of the Trump administration's policies. And I'm not making that case, but it's a case that President Trump has certainly made repeatedly. I mean, the Ninth Circuit rulings, they've ruled against Trump administration policies on DACA, sanctuary city funding, the travel ban, this asylum issues. I mean, is there a point, does President Trump have a point here that the Ninth Circuit has been a thorn in his side, as he said?
Yeah, absolutely. President Trump is right. The Ninth Circuit has definitely been a thorn in his administration's side. But him getting into this exchange with John Roberts is probably, it's poking the bear a little bit, because if Trump believes that the courts have been politicized, kind of going after them again is kind of tempting fate. And you may risk the Ninth Circuit or even other circuits of the judiciary ruling against the Trump administration on even less controversial items or executive actions.
Well, and President Trump did seem to try to tone down the rhetoric just a little bit by saying that, he does really like the Chief Justice. So a little bit of cooling the rhetoric there. But in terms of the Ninth Circuit, I mean, is there anything that President Trump or the Trump administration could do about it?
Well, the one thing that President Trump could do is to not tweet as much. I mean, I think pretty much everyone in the administration, while we in the media enjoy President Trump tweeting at very early in the morning or throughout the day.
We enjoy that?
Maybe I enjoy that, but there's certainly parts of the administration that that may be undermined when he does tweet. And while he does control the message, there are definitely some risks to it, and we may not know right away what happens with Trump versus the judiciary, but if something happens that works against the Trump administration, that would be the turning point. His beef with John Roberts as the main signal that basically led to all these other things.
I like the 7 a.m. tweets from the president. 6 a.m., that's just a little too early.
I love the 5 and 3 a.m. tweets.